Good afternoon. My name is Lon Moeller. I'm the Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs and Provost. I'd like to welcome you to today's presidential speaker event featuring Will Lovett and Dent Thompson from Phoenix Air. On behalf of President Butler and the entire university community, thank you for joining us today, and a special welcome to Will and Dent. They've had a great day on campus, and I want to again thank you for being here and talking to our students about yourselves and Phoenix Air. It's my pleasure this time to introduce our moderator. That's Ms. Cece Chen. Cece is finishing up her MBA degree this fall in the O'Malley College of Business, and she'll start a second master's degree in aviation finance next semester. Cece is a third-generation pilot. After earning her undergraduate degree in commercial aviation maintenance at Western University in Ontario, Canada, Cece flew with several Canadian air carriers and received her airline transport pilot license with over 2,000 hours of flight. Will you please join me in welcoming Cece?
Thank you, Professor Moeller. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks again for taking your time joining us to our presidential speaking event and highlight the Phoenix Air. It is our honor to have our two distinguished guests from Phoenix Air Group and as well as the Phoenix Air unmanned service vehicles. Phoenix Air Group is actually one of the world's largest leading dominant players among the industry. Nowadays, Phoenix Air has more than 350 employees and more than 40 fleet in their entire group. We also have our guest, Mr. Dent Thompson. He is currently the Senior Vice President and the Chief Operating Officer from the Phoenix Air. I was able to actually find out interesting is talking to him during lunch that prior to joining Phoenix Air, he used to work at the Walt Disney Group for more than 13 years. And he has actually involved largely in multiple projects, including the Apricot. And I guess he's just running out of interesting projects to do and then finally joined the Phoenix Air afterwards. He successfully reshaped the Phoenix Air from a traditional air cargo company into a multi-dimensional business group and then cover the multi-business segment. And then I will let highlights to Dent to talk about later in his presentations. We also have Mr. William Lovett joining us today. And he is currently the managing operating officers for the Phoenix Air unmanned service group. He is also I'm very proud to say, a previous graduate from Embry-riddle Aeronautical University in the year of 1991. So we're always welcome back to Eagle, welcome back home. I'm glad you love our new campus. So Will has served in the U.S. Air Army for more than 28 years. He also has more than 20 years of industry experience in the field of aircraft management, risk management, as well as aviation insurance. So next, I'm going to pass the spotlight to Mr. Dent Thompson, and he's going to talk about more in depth of some of the special missions that Phoenix Air Group do. Mr. Dent, you're up.
Well, it's good to be back seeing a lot of friends. Cece, thank you. Dr. Butler, who, by the way, have visited us and have a pretty good idea of what we do. My name is Dent Thompson. My brother started the company. I'm here by virtue of nepotism because I left working for Disney for 13 years, came back up to Atlanta, and joined my brother. I'm going to go very fast. I have a pretty broad range of items to talk about, and we'll be going through them very quickly, followed by Will Lovett, who's going to talk about Phoenix Air Unmanned. Phoenix Air itself is a Part 135 certificated airline, but we're really more than that. There are a lot of 135 operations. They belong to small airlines, commuters. They belong to corporate flight departments, so on and so forth. And they do a wide range of things from moving people to moving cargo and so forth. Phoenix Air is that and more. We're a special missions company. We're these days, I think I can confidently say we're the largest special missions company in the United States, possibly in the world. And you're going to see a lot of the things that we do that you will be aware of, but you had no idea that a company out of Cartersville, Georgia, 40 miles north of Atlanta, is actually orchestrating all of this. So again, I'm going to move along quickly, but it all started with the venerable old Beech 18 tail dragger that my brother got a couple of them, and we started off hauling cargo for the automotive industry way back in the 70s. Today, just one portion of our fleet involves a great number of Learjet Model 35s, 36s that does electronic warfare for the military. We also have another 18 or 20 Gulfstreams. We have Embry-riddle 120s. We have over 45 business class aircraft in our fleet. And they're all flown and maintained by Phoenix Air. We have a large maintenance division of over 100 specialists. We have over 50 doctors, nurses, and paramedics in our medical division, something about like 65 or 68 pilots on staff, altogether about 350 employees. Again, I'm going to talk special missions, and this is sort of the backbone of our military special missions. We call it Graybird, where we will take a corporate Learjet and we will put hard points under it, we'll load it with electronic warfare equipment, and then we'll go up and we'll play war games against modern fighters. This is typical where we fly against naval ships. This is one of our Lears coming in about 15 feet above the water down the side of a Aegis-equipped, I think that's a cruiser, and we're playing the enemy. And we're going out into big military operating areas and we're flying against these warships, and to them, we are an adversarial object in the sky. Now everybody says, why do civilians do it? The military, quite a number of years ago, used to conduct their own training using their own personnel and equipment, and they got away from that and went to contractors so that they don't detrain highly trained military pilots to use adversarial techniques. Because in a clinch, in a war situation, they're worried that maybe somebody would revert to an adversarial technique by mistake. So these days, most of the adversarial training is done by contractors. We also tow targets against warships and other items. We have a number of jets equipped with this large white tow reel, the RM-30A, and then we have about 15 different types of targets. In this case, it's the GT400, and we can spool these targets up to 5 miles behind our jet. And different targets do different things. We have some targets that the target alone costs $1.2 million. And then we have some that are throwaway targets that we actually fly over ships in live gunnery, and they shoot real bullets just behind our jets. It can be very dicey work, and we have to be a lot of safety involved. Another thing we do is called range clearing. In this case, we take Gulfstream jets, and our engineering group puts these large domes on the bottom with very sophisticated radar in them, and then we go out before war games and we clear very large swaths of ocean from any civilian or commercial vessels that might be in a war games area, because there's going to be live fire. This is also done when they're shooting ballistic missiles for intercept training. Where they hit the missile, that debris is going to come down, and it can sink ships and kill people. So we go out. We have our staff that sits in the back of the airplane, and we can clear. Each jet can clear 750,000 square miles of ocean in one day. So we'll go out a day or two before these practices, and we're also getting rid of Soviet and Chinese intelligence ships, because all the different militaries of the world are all spying on each other, and they take regular commercial fishing trawlers, turn them into spy ships, and they'll send them near war games, and part of our job is to go identify all of these ships and to get them out of the area. Medevac. We have developed the large cargo door jet. We have the only Gulfstream jets in the world with this large cargo door, which enables us to do air ambulance for people that have severe brain injury, spine injury, where you can't maneuver them in through the passenger door. This is a typical operation overseas where we went into a military base, and those of you in medicine will go, oh, you can't show this picture because of HIPAA, but we've got permission to do it. And we will get some, very severely injured folks. A lot of them are from IEDs in Afghanistan, Iraq, and other places around the world, and then we bring them back to medical areas. Some of our jets we turn into mass casualty interiors like you'll see here. We can carry 4 critical care patients, the same as an ICU at the local hospital, plus medical attendants. And believe it or not, who uses this a lot are the cruise lines, because you'll go on a cruise and you'll be down in Curacao or Turks and Caicos, and you'll go on shore and you'll rent a Jeep and you'll go for a ride in the mountain and you'll get in an accident. And everyone is pretty severely injured. They don't really have good class 1 medical facilities, and then we get a call to go in and begin to shuttle people back to Miami, Jacksonville, and other places for advanced medical help. One of our specialties is dealing with unusual medical equipment. This is a device you're not really seeing much of it, called the Berlin heart pump, and this essentially will keep a human, generally it's a baby, alive waiting on a heart transplant. So we will go, in this particular instance, we went into Japan, and we go there quite often, and we will pick up neonates on the Berlin heart pump, and we will transport them to the US or to Canada for a heart transplant. So this is very, very precise work, and we do quite a bit of it. Another thing we do that's very unusual is we work for US Africa Command, also known as AFRICOM. AFRICOM was set up in 2009 by President Bush, and there was so much disease and problems, AIDS and other things in Africa, that he wanted the U.S. to pay more, the U.S. government plus the Department of Defense to pay more attention. So they created U.S. Africa Command. Now, the U.S. Air Force couldn't support them. It was 100% already subscribed for the rest of the world, so they went to a contractor supply concept for all air handling in the continent of Africa. So anyway, Phoenix Air bid it, won it in 2009. We have continued to win it, and we still run it today. We've got another few years left on the current contract. Our aircraft are based in Stuttgart, Germany, which is where AFRICOM is headquartered, but we operate constantly to over 120 locations in Africa, Europe, and the Middle East. This gives you an idea just for this one contract. We currently hold 11 federal contracts with Department of Defense, Department of State, NASA, DARPA, Department of Energy. We do a lot of weird stuff around the world, and we're going to briefly talk about it. Our biggest claim to fame is the Aeronautical Biological Containment System, known as the ABCS. Those of you that have had a chance to go out on the ramp and look inside of our Gulfstream that's parked out there, you will see the ABCS. At the conclusion of this, before we strike everything, I would invite you to go out and take a look at it. But the ABCS was developed in 2007 under contract to the Centers for Disease Control. Nobody in the world then and today, other than us, has a workable biocontainment unit that can be put in an aircraft and to move highly, highly contagious patients intercontinental or even within the United States. So we were asked by the CDC to develop the system. It took us from 2008 to 2011, at which point the FAA granted us a patent. And those of you in engineering know it as an STC, supplemental type certification, but it means we own the rights to this system. and no one else has come along and been able to develop anything like it. Oddly enough, our CDC contract ended in 2011, and we were left holding the bag, in this case the ABCS, which we marketed throughout the federal government, but the world was fairly quiet from 2011 till 2014. And this is what it looks like. It's a large negative pressure container that is put inside of a Gulfstream 3, and it takes up about half of the interior of the jet. But it's more than just a chamber. You'll see on the floor a door. Part of the system is we replace the baggage door in the back of the airplane with special baffles where we control the airflow inside of the plane. This unit is designed to safely transport a human being with any disease known to mankind. We deal with SARS, tuberculosis, Ebola, Marburg fever, Lassa hemorrhagic fever, on and on and on. On the inside, our medical crew sits on the outside of it while the patient is inside of it, but our people can come and go and deal with the patient while we're in transit. So then, remember, in 2011, we had completed developing them. We had 10 of them on the shelf, but the world was quiet until July of 2014 when Ebola broke out in Western Africa. Now, Ebola is a naturally occurring disease. It's always been there, but it wasn't recognized as a unique disease until sometime in the 70s, and it was named Ebola virus disease because the scientists were camping along the Ebola River when they determined it was its own disease. So Ebola broke out, and a lot of U.S. and foreign medical people flocked to Africa on goodwill missions to try to help the African governments control the spread of Ebola. And a lot of them got sick. The mortality rate for Ebola in those days was about 65%. So the odds were strongly in the favor that if you were over there working and there was a mistake and you caught it, you were going to die. I won't go into the whole background, but a number of U.S. medical professionals did catch it, and the very first one was a man named Dr. Kent Brantley. And we were contacted by the White House, the Secretary of State, and the National Security Council saying, hey, we heard about that system you developed. Will it work for Ebola? And we went through a dog and pony show. We showed them it would. And in August 1st of 2014, we headed over to Monrovia, Liberia, and we brought Dr. Brantley back, and that was the first of over 40 flights we did in a 6-month period. And this is actually taken in Atlanta at Dobbins Air Reserve Base of our medical team bringing Dr. Brantley off our jet. He's in the center. And of course, when we take them on the jet, they're in PPE, and then they live for 13 or 14 hours in the unit while we keep them alive. Our medical people keep them alive, and then we dress them again, and he was able to walk, and we brought him off. So he was the first in the world to be transported with Ebola. He did live, and he's now back in Africa as a physician again. The second person was Nancy Wright-Bold, a medical professional who was working with him, and she was pretty close to death, and she couldn't walk, and so this is us again a few days later bringing her off of an aircraft and in for treatment, and she lived. And then we got busy. Like I said, we did over 40 missions. Not all of them came to the United States. A lot of them went to Europe. A lot of work for the World Health Organization, the U.S. government, Doctors Without Borders, on and on and on. So we were very busy from August of 2014 through April, May of 2015 until they got Ebola under control. So once Ebola was under control, we had a hot wash with the State Department's medical division and the CDC and others, and we said, what are our lessons learned? Well, our proprietary single patient ABCS system you just saw is one patient in one aircraft. At the height of Ebola, we had 4 jets, and we were running nonstop flights between Africa and Europe and Africa and the United States. And after every flight, we're having to decontaminate, which takes 24 hours. It's a very labor-intensive thing, and it takes 3 days to turn a plane around and be ready to go again. So the government wanted a higher capacity patient system. So we all sat down and put our brains together, and we came up with the containerized biocontainment system, CBCS, which can transport up to 4 highly contagious patients with any disease and 6 medical staff inside the unit keeping them alive in complete isolation. And this is what it looks like. It's as big as a tractor trailer, 44 feet long, 8 feet tall, 8 feet wide. It weighs 26,000 pounds. And we keep them up in Cartersville in storage, and we have to bring in a tractor trailer, but they're not going to fit in a Gulfstream, or any business aircraft. So we have to charter a Boeing, and it'll only go in 3 types of aircraft. A Boeing 747 cargo plane with the tip-up nose, a C-17 military plane, or a Russian Antonov. Well, in these days, we're not dealing with the Russians, so really the military and the Boeing 747 are the 2 options that we look at. And this is down at Atlanta Hartsfield, and it's a big production. And we have to bring it out. We have to put it on what's called a cookie cutter. We have to raise it up 18 feet in the air, and it slides inside of the 747. We can get 4 of these in one 747 and still have seating for another 100 people or so. So these are enormous aircraft. Everybody says, why do you use a cargo plane? Well, number one, it won't fit in a passenger plane. And number 2, you can't decontaminate the inside of a passenger plane, and I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. So all of the folks you see are Phoenix Air employees. The Coletta Air Service out of Michigan that we use principally. We also use Omni Air and some others. They'll provide the aircraft, the flight crew, but we provide all of the medical staff in the handling of these units. So this gives you an idea. Way up in the front, you can see the one CBCS unit sitting there, and we can get lots and lots of people behind it for the mission. So this is what the inside looks like. 4 passenger beds, and it actually has 3 chambers. This is, we call the hot room. So up to 4 infected patients are in this. That big door you see at the end, that door weighs 450 pounds. And when we open that door, we go into the middle chamber we call the warm chamber. And that's where you're going to put on your PPE and take off your PPE because it's so hot. Our medical people have to change out about every hour. And so there's a constant rotation. And then the 3rd chamber we call the cold room, which is forward of it, is where off-duty staff sits, takes a break, watches a video on their laptop, eats, drinks, bathrooms. Once we're operational with a contagious patient, the medical crew can never come out of the chamber into the inside of the aircraft. They're locked in there for sometimes 14, 18 hours. Typical crew, 4 to 5 of our staff, and when they're in the hot room, when they're with the patients, they're completely garbed up. And a lot of the technology today used in hospitals actually is a result of early work that our medical people did with the Ebola virus, because there was just never a big call for the PPE at the level that we operate at. And this is what it looks like when you have patients on board. This is a mock-up, but in real life, it's life and death inside of this chamber. It can get pretty dramatic. So by May of 2015, the Ebola outbreak was over, and other world events were going on, which we got involved in. Now, again, remember, today I'm talking about special missions that we do. So I'm going to roll through a number of special missions to give you a flavor of what life is like at Phoenix Air. In July 2016, they had a coup d'etat in Sudan. And the vice president formed an army. He wanted to be the president. The president had an army. The two armies were fighting. They overran the embassy row, and a lot of Americans were shot, hurt, stabbed. Some of them jumped out of second-story windows to get away from the rebels. Bad situation. Here's the problem. Military had zero assets in North Africa. So we got a call, hey, can you rush to Washington, pick up a couple of special tactical teams, and take them over to Juba, South Sudan, the capital, and deliver them to guard our embassy, and then pick up 11 Americans that have been injured and bring them back out down to Nairobi, Kenya, to a hospital down there. This is what it looked like out the door of our airplane. A tremendous amount of due diligence went into this mission. We're not crazy, but it is calculated, a lot of what we do. We were able to get them to send a SEAL team from Djibouti, a country over east of Sudan. And so the guys down at the bottom of the door with the full battle gear, that's a SEAL team. They came in on an Osprey, one of those cool tilt rotor from Djibouti, and their job was to guard us while we downloaded the tactical team and we uploaded the 11 patients. We were on the ground maybe an hour and a half max. Very dramatic, and that's just sort of when the government can't do something for itself, I think we're on everyone's speed dial. In June 2017, many of you will be familiar with Otto Warmbier. He was a college student from Cincinnati, Ohio. He was probably ill-advisedly on a trip to North Korea, and he got caught pulling down a political poster for a souvenir, and he ended up getting something like 9 years in prison. And on his first night, after a kangaroo court, his first night in prison, something occurred, and there are all kind of different theories, but he became brain dead. So he was in a coma. But we didn't know really much of this, and we were approached about, would you, Phoenix Air, go into North Korea, and would your medical director appear and, do an analysis of Otto's medical condition and then appear before the North Korean court that convicted him and appeal for his release. And we said, okay. And again, after a lot of careful, oversight to make sure that our people would not be in harm's way, we did the mission. And we did get Otto. This was very, very hush-hush, very classified. And right up to the point that we exited, and we were there for 2 days. This was not in and out. We went in, our medical director spent the night, and they're actually making a motion picture of this entire thing because a lot of us involved have all been interviewing with screenwriters, and so eventually it'll probably be at the movies, and I'm not sure who I want to play me, but we'll figure that out. So as soon as we cleared North Korea's airspace, the president held a press conference. We didn't know about it, and all hell broke loose. And so this was our plane landing in, and it's the same jet that's on your ramp right now. This was it landing in Anchorage, Alaska to refuel, and the media was going crazy. And from there, we went on down to Cincinnati, Ohio. And this is a picture shot by the media with a long-range lens. And you can see the cargo door on the far side of the plane is open. We, on these type things, strategically park with the door away from the media. And we've got a fair amount of experience in dealing with the media on these type things. I have 2 degrees in journalism, so I sort of know how to, the media mentality. And we want to lessen the shock to family and other folks that are coming on these missions. So Otto was brought down the air stair, or the ramp on the far side, and he unfortunately died a week later. It's pretty clear the North Koreans knew that he was very close to death. If he died, they would lose a bargaining chip, and so they decided to go ahead and release him. But again, that's one of the more unusual type things that we do. In March of 2019, Hugo Chavez was the former dictator of Venezuela, and he passed away, and his hand-picked replacement was Eduardo Maduro, who became the dictator of Venezuela, and relations between the U.S. and Venezuela went straight downhill, and it got so bad that we needed to abandon our embassy. And this was not done lightly. So we were contacted by the Secretary of State, and he said, can you guys develop a plan and execute it to rescue 24 American diplomats and their co-workers from the U.S. Embassy in Caracas. Now, if you've ever been to Venezuela, Caracas is in a valley, and the big airport is called Macatilla, and it's down on the coast. So it was up to the U.S. Department of State to get them moved in vehicles at a pre-designated time from Caracas through the valley and some tunnel systems and so forth down to the main airport. Now, again, with 24 Americans, they had computers. It's just like in the movies. All the classified stuff was coming out with them. We couldn't go in a bunch of Gulf Streams. So what we did, a lot of what we do is in collaboration with other companies that work with us. We got what's called an L-100, which is a military C-130, but a civilian version. And I'm not going to go into too much details on it, but we, on the designated day, we had a number of tactical teams that were on islands offshore, and then the L-100 went in. This picture was on Facebook or something, and it was of somebody in the airport terminal taking a picture, and everybody's wondering what this airplane with no markings is doing. Well, we grabbed all the Americans and we boogied out of there, and the U.S. has not been back to Venezuela since, although they're trying to look at normalizing relations. Okay, that gets us up until New Year's Eve 2019. And then a lot of things happened in the world, and things went crazy at Phoenix Air. And I'm going to go, again, very rapidly, but you're going to see some crazy stuff that you've heard about, but you had no idea we were in the background, the ones actually doing it. So I'm enjoying a nice New Year's Eve when the Iranian-backed Shia militia invaded the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. And you'll all remember they lit fires and everything broke loose in the Middle East. And it was bad news. And our embassy was guarded by a bunch of 18-year-old kids, Marines, not quite ready for this level of not combat, but of, the situation. So we were contacted that night. My New Year's Eve was shot. And we're all on the phone, and we're beginning to call people in. And we immediately deployed 2 security teams, tactical teams, for regional support aboard 2 of our Gulf Streams, and we had them in 24 hours in place in 2 different places in the Middle East, because Baghdad was going to have to live and die on its own, but there were other countries in the area which were under threat of a similar Arab rebellion, and they needed to protect U.S. interests there. So a new problem was that certain embassies like Beirut is located, if you look at the map, the international airport is at the southern end of the city, and the embassy is on the northern end of the city. And all of these embassies have large walled-in compounds that you can get several big helicopters into, but you couldn't land at the international airport because you'd be driving up Sniper Alley trying to get from there to reinforce. So the State Department once again said, what can you do? And we said, helicopters, and big ones. So we immediately were approved. We went to a company in Texas that we work with. They do similar work to us. We got hold of a couple of 30-passenger large helicopters. Then we rented a Russian AN-12, not run by the Russians. It was operated by a Belarusian company that's friendly with the U.S., and we had that jet flown from Europe into Texas, and we uploaded 2 of these helicopters, and by January the 6th, we had multiple helicopters on the island of Cyprus with a pretty big contingency of tactical forces poised and ready. Nothing happened, so they never went operational, but that's how quick these things will happen. And this is what one of those big choppers looks like. You'll see an N number on it. These are not military helicopters. Okay, then COVID-19 comes along. So remember, this is, the end of December in 19 into the middle of January of 2020, and at about the same time, press releases, medical centers are starting to see this new disease crop up, principally in China, and they're worried about it migrating elsewhere. And this all started at about the same time we're dealing with the problems in the Middle East. So as soon as the Middle East was settled down, we were asked to shift all of our efforts over. And the first thing they determined is we need to evacuate the U.S. Embassy in Wuhan, China, which appeared to be the epicenter of the COVID-19 outbreak. And people didn't know much about COVID-19. So we coordinated 2 Boeing 747s. We went into Wuhan, and then all of the other Americans started yelling, "Come help us." So the State Department said, "Get them all out." So we ended up putting 5 more 747 cargo airplanes, and again, I'll come back to why they're cargo, and we ended up moving 1,100 American diplomats, their families, and business people who all worked in Wuhan. So everybody heard about Wuhan, but Phoenix Air was in charge of the evacuation of Wuhan at that time. And this is what it looked like. These are pictures taken out the window. Again, we used cargo aircraft. Buses were bringing people to it. And here's why. You can decontaminate the inside of a cargo plane. It's just steel and aluminum. So any viruses, you can, once the trip is done, you can decontaminate. On a passenger plane, you can't do it. And we had to acquire hundreds of passenger seats out of the desert in Tucson, Arizona, truck them up to Coletto's facilities in Michigan, and load them into these airplanes. Then we put all of our medical people along with some government medical people, and we had to take care of all of these people. This was not a luxury flight. There was no meal service, and they were on the plane. It was get out of Dodge as quick as you can, which is what we did. And this is typical of how it looked inside. It was a pretty rough situation, but we got everyone out. And as quick as that was sort of wrapped up, then the cruise ships, COVID started breaking out in all of the cruise ships. So you had the Diamond Princess in Yokohama, Japan, and we ended up going in there with another couple of 747s, and we brought 328 Americans back to the United States. Shortly thereafter, the Grand Princess actually got as far as Oakland, California, and it was full of Americans and foreigners. We didn't want to bring, we meaning the U.S. government, didn't want to bring foreign sick citizens, so we again went into Oakland and picked up foreign sick citizens, overflew America, and took them back to their various home countries in Europe. So there's a lot of politics that go into this thing. And this is some of our employees. They call themselves the Wuhan Wrecking Crew. And some are medical, some are, the guy in blue in the middle is the head of our decontamination group. His father used to be president of Coca-Cola. Everybody figured Clay Wardlaw, the Wardlaw family, big name in Coca-Cola. He said, nope, I like this kind of work. And he now runs one of the big decontamination operations for the U.S. government. The guys in red, Phoenix Air employees, and they would be just basically living on these airplanes. So the early evacuations, as a recap, we did Wuhan, China, the ships. So between January 28th and February 20th, just a month, we performed with our subcontractors the largest non-military evacuation of U.S. citizens by air in U.S. history. So the new map, you remember this map I showed first week of January? Here's the new map now as we get into February and March. And COVID was going rampant across the world, and the world entered lockdown. All the airlines were grounded, everything grounded. And so we were asked, first of all, to begin to deploy medevac Gulfstreams out to Guam in the Pacific and to Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean, very remote places, to bring high-level American diplomats that were very, very sick with COVID on ventilators out of those areas. So our new operation started in 2020, and it was to repatriate at-risk Americans. Now, what's an at-risk American? You are a missionary in Africa. You are the manager of a manufacturing company in Taiwan. You're an American, you're working somewhere abroad, and you're on health maintenance drugs. You're on high blood pressure medicine, insulin, diabetes, any number of human afflictions. And all of a sudden, there's no more medicine, okay? The supply chain for the world was shut down, and when the drugstores ran out of medicine, you're going to die. So the U.S. government told American citizens abroad, go to the local embassy, register, we're going to evaluate, and the most at-risk Americans will be brought back to the United States from around the world. You never hear about this stuff, but this is what our government does. So our job was not only to move at-risk Americans, but we needed to move diplomatic personnel between embassies and consuls, along with diplomatic pouches. So the U.S. government can't stop, and because all the airlines shut down, we were the only solution left standing. So 2020 was very busy. Phoenix Air and our subcontractors operated over 1,000 flights worldwide using 58 different aircraft. We flew into 136 different countries. We delivered over 178,000 pounds of diplomatic cargo, and we brought home over 100,000 Americans. And it was all coordinated out of Cartersville, Georgia, believe it or not. It sounds crazy. So then 2021 starts, and now we get even busier. So the U.S. government selected Pfizer for the COVID-19 vaccine over Moderna, because Moderna was going to be about 1 month later getting FDA approval. So the problem with Pfizer is that vaccine must be stored at 100 degrees below zero, minus 100 degrees Fahrenheit. The freezer in your home kitchen will only go down to maybe zero. You got to go 100 degrees south of that. So what we had to do is the government wanted to get ultra cold freezers that will go that low dispersed around the world into U.S. embassies and consuls, their medical group all over the world. And so the first thing we did, the government buys about 300 of these freezers. Our engineering staff had to build all kinds of devices where each one works in a different environment because there are different electrical systems around the world. So anyway, we went into what's called phase one. So in January, February of 2021, our engineers developed the power systems, and then we delivered over 200 of these freezers around the world. But we couldn't deliver the vaccine. We had to get the freezers there first. And this is what it looks like. Each freezer was in a large box. We had to load them on our jets. We went all over the world. We were working day and night. And once they were all delivered, we went into phase two. And phase two was to deliver the actual vaccine. So we had to have working freezers inside our aircraft so that we would receive the vaccine, we would keep it in the airplane while we flew around the world, and we had multiple airplanes, different sizes, and then we developed a hub and spoke to again get it out. And this is what the world map looked like to us. And again, we used everything from 737s, 767s, Gulfstreams, on and on and on. And this is what it looks like. This was probably somewhere in Africa where we landed, and they're delivering the vaccine to go to the local embassy. So between the two different waves that occurred during 2021, we flew into 213 airports worldwide. We flew more than 500,000 nautical miles. We made 200 deliveries twice into each location, once with the freezer, then with the vaccine. We delivered more than 128,000 doses at minus 100 degrees and 0 lost doses. FedEx beat that. So 2022, this year, COVID-19 gets under control using vaccines and quarantines. The international airlines are coming back to business, resuming service. And our frantic pace during 2020 and 2021 goes back to normal for Phoenix Air. But it's not always normal. Ukraine. We had been operating regularly within Ukraine during the Russian buildup, moving embassy personnel and whatnot, and we were flying both into Russia and into Ukraine. And our last flight out of Ukraine was the morning that Russia invaded. So it was that tight. Now, you may have heard on the news about the cancer kids, and all of the hospitals in Ukraine could no longer receive cancer treatment for young children, and they were all going to die. And a number of countries, including the U.S., said, we'll take all of these kids and we'll bring them into our medical centers and keep their treatment going. And so we ended up doing the cancer kids that went to St. Jude's Hospital in Memphis. So they would get them out of Ukraine into Poland, and we would upload the children and their families in Poland and end up in Memphis. So that was a little bit of a bright spot. So I'm going to end with this. What's old is new again. 2014, during the Ebola outbreak in West Africa, over 11,000 deaths, and it was the original variant called Zaire. There's 7 variants of Ebola. Everybody just thinks it's a generic disease, 7 variants. Now it's broken out again in Uganda. And as of last week, when I prepared this PowerPoint, there were over 50 deaths. And we're back once again in standby as medical folks from around the world flow into into Uganda and neighboring countries to deal with it. We're once again, but this time it's a different variant called Sudan variant, and there's no vaccines. There's, the cures are very difficult, but this is what we do. Now, what I'm going to do now is quit talking, and I'm going to let 3 of our senior pilots, captains, tell you what it's like to work for Phoenix Air. It's about a 2.5-minute video, and we produced it recently, and I think you'll find it very interesting.
As new possible Ebola cases emerge in Texas and now Washington, D.C.
With the Americans stranded abroad after testing positive for COVID on international trips.
Leaders from West African states met Tuesday to try and put an end to the political instability in the region.
When I get ready to launch on a trip, I know that there's somebody on the other end that needs what only we can offer. We're launching to provide a service to somebody that they can't get anywhere else. Traveling the world here in Phoenix is very different from traveling with a major airline because what we do is so varied.
You might be on an air ambulance today, and tomorrow you're going out to play a variety of different war games, and the next day you're doing a hazmat haul for them.
When I started here at Phoenix, I really didn't know exactly the types of missions that we would be getting into, to the extent of the work that we do that we just can't talk about. Knowing that we're doing something for our country that's to that level is, to me, extremely gratifying.
I like the idea of being able to help people out. I like the idea of being able, when someone is in a tight spot, that you can contribute in some way to try to help them out.
I can bring home somebody who might not have ever seen their family again or receive the care they need to actually get better and to continue living their life.
I think it takes a unique individual to want to work here to do the type of mission that we do. It's not a 9-to-5 kind of thing. It's not just a job. It's not just a paycheck.
I never really looked at this job at Phoenix as a step to the next job. I always looked at Phoenix as we're the pinnacle of what we do.
I do this job because it's a sense of purpose. We fulfill a bigger role than just flying an airplane. We actually help people, and that to me is something that's very important.
What we do makes an impact on people all over the world. It's more than just going from point A to point B. It's changing people's lives.
It is very rewarding to work at a place like Phoenix that they don't seem to have a limit on what they can accomplish.
That is actually impossible to follow. My name is Will Lovett. I'm the director of Phoenix Air and Man in Cartersville. I have had the privilege of standing up this company, sister company to Phoenix Air, 8-year-old company. And if any of y'all remember anything from Dent's presentation, you'll remember the date of July 2014 as the date of Ebola broke out. Guess what was the first day on the job for me? July of 2014. I was like, what have I done here? There are media trucks and all kind of chaos around the world, but obviously it was managed chaos, and I've enjoyed every day I have been at Phoenix Air. I appreciate the opportunity to explain a little bit about Phoenix Air and Man and about our short evolution so far. Obviously, you've heard about the parent company and all that we are involved with. We started unmanned in 2014, where basically there were no regulations for UAS. Really, the mission was, what can we do with these aircraft commercially, and what can we do to structure this company to be best in class? The idea was to take what I learned through the military experience, through what Phoenix Air has developed as a structure, as a 135 carrier and as a defense contractor, and marry all that all together with best practices on how we could present ourselves to the regulators and to businesses that might want to hire us. The one thing that we did determine is, because at that point there were no regulations, is we wanted everyone that was going to be an operator to have at minimum a private pilot certificate, and that still stands today. The various areas that we saw as commercial opportunities, reviewed many of them, but the mission that really drew us close was critical infrastructure inspection. There's a budget, there's a mission, and there's a need to add safety. Unfortunately, there's a lot of fatalities involving helicopter pilots working in proximity to power lines. So that is really what we have been focused on for those last 8 years. As I mentioned earlier, as we have evolved, we're looking to the industry to say, hey, what is best practices out there? How do we gain some knowledge beyond what we know internally? So we started working with third-party auditors, Argus, and most recently ISBO, the International Standards for Business Aircraft Operations. I'm proud to say that we were the first operator, remote pilot aircraft systems operator, to achieve that registration. So we have achieved those standards. We have worked with USI, the Unmanned Safety Institute, as a training platform for all of our aircraft operators, and that is something they do annually. Again, we follow NIST practices, so again, trying to build a baseline of doing what's right, and from a safety perspective, not only because we want to keep our people safe, but the people and property that are not in the UAS operation. To give you a little glimpse of what this looked like back in 2015, again, we were hired by our utility to do a proof of concept. The mission was to fly 5 miles of transmission lines, visual line of sight, and the idea is we were going to fly this aircraft as an air environment Vapor 55, and basically fly it and do orbits around the structure with a gimbal camera and take imagery and provide that back to the utility as a proof of concept. Unfortunately, you'll see there that this mission took 2.5 days to complete 5 miles. So we learned a lot from that is, hey, we need some regulatory enablement to get beyond visual line of sight. We need a system that's reliable and safe. We need a system that's easy to set up and tear down. So again, this was really the genesis of what do we need to do from this experience to be able to scale the business. So we started the progress of working with the FAA, seeing what's possible with waivers and exemptions, working on what aircraft are out there commercially available, what can we integrate as far as sensors, what do the utilities want? They want several things. Every utility is different, but they want LiDAR, they want high resolution imagery, some want live video, some want IR. So really getting together with the utility industry to find out what sensors we need to integrate and what do they want as a finished product from our flights. So we knew we had to fly BV loss. We knew we had to fly, not that we had to fly over people, but unfortunately, we're in this environment where we may fly over people. Typically, utility lines are in remote areas, and people don't build homes under utility lines, and we work with all those factors to come up with a submission to the FAA for a waiver. So over the last 5 years, you'll see some statistics here. This is a combination of about 4.5 years of work. We did receive a BV loss waiver and have been flying under that waiver for the last few years. Over 13,000 circuit miles flown. You'll see the average number of miles per day is about 34. I think the longest is probably on the bottom right there. The most miles inspected is 134. The biggest number you'll see on that screen is over 3 million images that we have taken over the last 4 years. All of a sudden, we're in the data business. Yeah, we knew that all along because we have a process of how we capture that data, how we store the data, and how we transmit that back to the utility or the third party that's going to be doing the analysis. But that's a monster. Again, this is, we're in the safety of operating aircraft, and all of a sudden we had to get really smart and experts on what to do to manage all this data. We get paid by providing pictures. If we don't provide that, we don't get paid. So that is a really key factor for us. Among many, many other things, like Dent explained, the Phoenix Air Group, a very versatile company with a lot of capabilities. And because Phoenix Air Group has the ability through an STC to modify G3s, there's some fabulous equipment we have, large CNC machines, 3D printers, and other things that we have access to. So we're very fortunate to be able to access this when we buy an aircraft and we want to integrate different sensors. We have the ability to actually engineer and integrate parts that we make. So we work with the engineers and the team at PAG for payload mounts and landing gears. And we do have engineers within PAU that help develop some of these items before they're made. So over the last few years, working with utilities and working with an aircraft that we initially submitted for our waiver, we want to go farther. We want to carry more sensors. We want more reliability. We completed an RFI to see what manufacturers were out there with equipment that would be affordable, would be reliable. Again, there's a pretty large gap between consumer, prosumer, and military. So what is in that sweet spot that we could afford and we could operate with the minimum amount of crews? It's just all about safety and economics. We came up with an aircraft that is made in Switzerland called the Swiss drone. And after a while of negotiating with Swiss drones, we have purchased this aircraft and submitted a petition for exemption to operate the aircraft. That petition has been in works for 2.5 years with the FAA. So the aircraft gives us the ability for increased endurance. It's powered by jet turbine, so we've got reliability there. We are able to integrate multiple sensors. What you see on this picture is 2 Phase 1 RGB cameras as well as a VUX1 LiDAR. So we're able to take one pass with this aircraft and combine a lot of data that the utility uses for multiple things. The process for exemption. So basically when we were getting up to speed of what is it going to take to fly, get the regulatory approval to fly an aircraft that's over 55 pounds. It's going to be under Part 91. What's the process? So 44807 is the petition for exemption that we filed. We were advised that first we needed to register the aircraft in the United States, which actually took some time. COVID didn't help with all that as well. We were told we had to receive a SAC-EC, a Special Airworthiness Certificate, experimental category, which we did. Then we have to get a COA, and we submitted for and received a COA for 2 flight areas, and these are specific to fly the aircraft for the FAA for the demonstration purposes. And then we needed a summary grant of exemption to exempt us from several FARs under Part 91 to be able to fly it for the FAA. All of those were done, and I'm proud to say that last month we completed the FAA's familiarization flight. We had 7 inspectors that came on site to one of our COA areas, and we were asked to demonstrate the aircraft, perform 3 flights. It was about an hour and a half for all 3, and that helps the FAA understand the system, and we're now in process of scheduling the FAA OSC, the Operational Suitability Evaluation. And that's a nice long word for show us what you plan to do with this aircraft that you submitted under your waiver. So we have to go out to a utility line, put it on the circuit line, and fly and supply the imagery and show the FAA normal and abnormal operations. So we're hoping to get that completed at first quarter of next year, and that will hopefully lead us up to the action on our 44807. It has been a long process, and I've certainly learned a lot through that. That is a brief snapshot, but I know you have some questions, so Cece, I will turn it back over to you, and we'll be happy to answer some questions.
Please have a seat.
Okay.
Someone over here, and please have a seat, please. Before we open the question pattern to the public, I just want to say that we really enjoyed both the presentation and the video. I know some of the special missions and projects that Phoenix Air and Phoenix Air have been doing, not only is the mission required, is actually reached to a humanitarian level, so it's very fascinating. Before we open up the Q&A, I just want to kick off with 2 questions for both Dent and Will. So first one is for Dent. So we're currently experiencing what we call the roller coaster phase of the industry, which including obviously the COVID pandemic. And that's actually lead to the repatriation mission from to different countries. Again, along with the unpredicted economic cycle. So how does the Phoenix Air monitor the changes we're currently experiencing, and how do you adjust the need in order to offer the related services?
Phoenix Air is no different than any other commercial airline in that if the airspace shuts down, we get shut down along with everyone else. COVID was an unusual situation where we were privatized by the federal government. We were, for the most part, removed from FAA oversight, and our aircraft operations were reassigned to the U.S. Department of State, and our aircraft became State Department designated aircraft, which, and it was a delicate political thing that the FAA doesn't get mad over this, because after COVID, we don't want to be sideways with our friends at the FAA. But they understood somebody had to provide air service to save people's lives. And that's what we fell into. It's nothing that we planned for. It just happened. We have a lot of extremely talented people at Phoenix. And when you hear about us using 58 different types of aircraft, our dispatchers and charter operators were working 24 hours a day coordinating with these airlines and the federal government and so forth. So again, we're no different than any company that you may work for one day in a situation like that, unless we're brought under the wing of the government to deal with it.
Thank you. And the second question is to you, Will. With the unmanned aircraft has been applied to many fields, which including the surveillance and the recon aerial vehicle services. Can you just tell us some of the popular business sectors that the unmanned vehicle are used for? Are there any what we call common misconceptions concerning the unmanned aircraft industry?
Well, we have been focused on linear infrastructure inspection, and that is huge in itself. Utility lines, pipelines, oil and gas, railroads. So, you know, those three sectors are huge just in the United States. And if you expand that beyond the United States, there's plenty of work to be done and can be used for UAS. We do other work as well. We're in the movie industry. We do some survey work for engineering firms. I mean, there are tremendous uses of this system. The question is, can you make money at it? Sure. And we are really focused on how we can do something safely and make money. We're in that business.
Gotcha. Okay, so I'm going to do next is we're going to open the question to the public. And audience here, if you have a question, please raise a hand and please come up to the auditorium here, and we have a mic here just to receive the sound a bit better. Yeah.
Thank you for coming to speak today. I just have a quick question for both of the speakers here today. What is the approach to innovation, and how do you both maintain relationships throughout the aviation industry? I noticed in the first presentation, it was a lot of, we have a company here, such as Kalita or the helicopter company. What is the approach to relationships and innovation, specifically in the aviation sector?
Well, let me just say that we have hired up to 12 interns from Embry-riddle in the last 4 years, and 4 of those have become full-time employees. So first of all, I enjoy a great relationship with the school, and I get a lot of fabulous candidates, as well as interns and full-time students, as well as get information on what is new and changing in the curriculum as well as the industry. We go to trade shows. I encourage a lot of not only students but employees to see what's out there. It's been hard the last couple of years with COVID and not being able to travel, but fortunately the trade shows are back open, and I've learned a lot from those. Fortunate to be on the BB-LOS ARC, so there's working groups, emerging technology group with NBAA. So, if somebody is inclined, put yourself out there as available and interested to learn what else is going on in emerging technologies, but also supply the information that you may know.
Thank you. Any more questions?
and don't take this wrong, the typical graduate from Embry-riddle in the pilot program is not quite seasoned enough to work for us. We need a little bit more experience. But ultimately, they are going to work for us. We have a great number of Embry-riddle grads that work for Phoenix Air, and they come out of school and they get jobs in commuter airlines, corporate flight departments, and so forth, and as co-pilots, and they begin to gain some experience. And after they've got not a huge amount of flight hours, but certainly more than you're probably going to graduate with, and if you're somebody who seeks adventure, okay, there's some folks, they want to be a corporate pilot, and they want to fly a brand new Gulfstream for a rich guy or girl, lady, and that's fine. And there's some pilots that want to be an airline pilot and fly from A to B and back to A and fly 4 times a month, and they're done, and that's fine. But then there are pilots who want a little bit more, kind of like the 3 pilots that you saw in the video. They wanted a little bit more than you're going to get in a 9-to-5 job, and we certainly offer that. Now, right now is a tough time in the aviation industry for pilots, mechanics, basically everybody in aviation. And all of the students that are currently there, you have a huge future in front of you, huge future. And what we're doing here today at the invitation of President Butler is telling you a little bit more about what we do, because you're not going to come to us this year, but maybe in 2 years, if we're the kind of company you want to work for, you're going to have a little bit more experience, and we love our Embry-riddle graduates.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Hello, thank you both for coming and sharing your knowledge and experience with us. I wanted to ask, because of the urgency of some of your missions, how do pilots and staff address risks of get-there-itis or other hazardous attitudes?
Could you repeat the question one more time, please?
Because of the urgency of some of your missions, how do pilots and staff address risks of get-there-itis and other hazardous attitudes?
The pilots having get-there-itis because of the urgency of getting to the
hazardous attitudes.
Get-there-itis. Hurry up. You're afraid you might miss something safety-wise because you're in a hurry.
Listen, I've been around jet engines, and it's dulled my hearing a little bit, and I'm too vain to get any kind of a hearing aid, so if I say I'm not quite, okay. I don't really have an answer for that. The FARs, the federal regulations, are what they are. One of the biggest drivers in being a pilot is the insurance industry. We're insured by Global Aerospace. It's one of the major insurance companies, but Global is going to set how many hours they want to see when an applicant comes to us. They're going to set the training. We happen to work with Flight Safety International, and we have full service packages for everyone. So there's no way for us to accelerate and get more employees other than to right now look for skilled employees that are already out there that want to change in their lifestyle, and to throw some seeds on the water for Embry-riddle grads for a little bit down the road.
Okay. I think President Butler has a question. Please go ahead.
I also want to thank you for coming because, as you mentioned, we've been there a couple of times, and it's an amazing place and the sorts of things you do. One of the jobs that I thought was really interesting was the dispatch. You mentioned it just a few minutes ago, how you're able to manage what is a global organization out of this little office in Cartersville, and the complexity of all of the paperwork you have to go through for different places. Could you talk about that? Because I know there's students who are also into that part of aviation as well, and I found it really intriguing.
Well, I'm not a dispatcher, so I can talk a little bit about it, but in the airline business, you show up at the airport and they've already filed your flight plan, they've already set everything up for your trip, and you basically are going to accept that in the flight ops office and get in your jet, maybe do a quick walk around, and you're ready to go. Phoenix Air is very different. Our dispatchers are the heart of the company, the absolute heart. Every call for service starts by a call into our dispatch, and we actually call it charters. It's not dispatch per se, it's charter. So every call comes in, and it may be new business, it might be a government client wanting something, but every call comes in. Then those dispatchers develop what we call a business plan, because everybody cares about money. Nothing is free. So they develop a plan, what it's going to cost, how long it's going to take to set it up. So there's a lot of sitting at a desk using various electronic tools and developing a model for what this client wants. Then we're going to present it to the client. Then if the client says, let's do it, then we're going to give them a contract. And we're going to get on board legally in a binding contract with the deposit and so forth. Then the dispatchers, are going to coordinate with our flight ops department, our maintenance department, our medical department, all of the different subunits in putting this particular trip together. Then they're going to manage the trip from when it takes off until it returns. Now, our pilots, the one way we differ from the airlines is on the road, when you're in Italy, when you're in Democratic Republic of the Congo, when you're in somewhere in the middle of nowhere, you don't have a dispatch department doing your flight plans for you. So all of our pilots are equipped with very sophisticated laptops with a lot of equipment in it, and they're going to generate their own flight plans, and they're going to file them in the field. And this is what's very different from the airlines. Our pilots make tons of decisions. If dispatch says you're going to go from here to here, when the pilot's doing a flight plan, he may say, nope, there's a country in here that isn't going to play ball. We're going to have to foul up to here and then go over to here and down to here. And it's a collaborative effort. So again, President Butler, back to your question, the absolute heart of an operation like ours are your people sitting at a desk that have to look at the big, whole, complete picture and pull in all these different departments and units and get them all working together. And we give our dispatchers a massive amount of authority to make those decisions, and we give our pilots a massive amount of authority to make real-time changes when we're actually operational. So therefore, we have a huge amount of trust in all of our employees.
Hi, my name is Ryan Wallace. I'm a faculty member in aeronautical science. Of course, we know each other well, and pleasure to meet you, Dent. Mr. Thompson, the first question is for you, and I actually have one question for each of you. I'm really impressed by how nimble the company is. You have a very wide diversity of mission sets, and you seem to have a company that rolls with the missions as they come. What would you attribute in terms of the organization's successes? How do you have that flexibility to adapt to all of these different mission needs? I mean, for me, I've never seen anything like your company outside of the military, to that having that level of nimble nature to adapt to the mission sets.
30 years of experience operating around the world. Number two, we know how to gather information. We're very good at that. If we're asked, like as an example, there's an area in northern Ethiopia called the Tigray region, and those of you that are into geography, they're having a civil war between the Tigray region and Addis Ababa, the capital. And we were asked by AFRICOM to go pick up some rebel leaders in the Tigray region and take them to an island offshore for peace negotiations. and a very short fuse, like same day. And we were able to look at it, to talk with people around the world that are in the know, and we were able to say, I'm sorry, we're not going to do it, because there's stuff that we will decline. It's just simply too dangerous, or there's too little knowledge. But we said to the DOD, I tell you what we will do, we'll go next door to Djibouti, and you have a military airplane go get these folks and bring them over a few hundred miles to the east, and we'll load them up and we'll take them to their peace negotiations, and that worked out quite well. We also have, you know, when you heard Will's presentation, the first major slide was safety, okay? ISBAO, IS. I mean, it was safety after safety after safety. Safety is literally paramount at Phoenix Air. Now, we are not adverse to risk. We will take calculated risk, but we will not tread into the danger area. Well, this has got our insurance company holding a great deal of confidence that we're not going to make a bad decision. So when we said to our insurance company, hey, we're flying into Pyongyang, North Korea next week or in a couple of days from now, they didn't freak out and say, your insurance is canceled. They said, tell us about your plan. And there are a few people within the insurance industry that are vetted for us to speak with, very frankly, and we'll talk about the decision processes that go into it if we choose to do the mission. And once insurance blesses it, we're sort of going there. And then the final thing is, the employees that work for us love this stuff. And believe it or not, they love being woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning and told, you know, we're going to saddle up and we're going to do this and that. And we give them extensive briefings. And they're very comfortable, again, that we're not going to put them into a dangerous situation. And that's just part of what is, it's a corporate culture of safety and can-do attitude and getting employees that are not satisfied with the status quo, but they want more than the status quo, as you probably saw in the video. All of those folks love what they do. They have big hearts, and they like helping people, because a lot of what we do, frankly, is life-saving type work.
Well, I just want to compliment you. You certainly created a company of problem solvers, and very effective problem solvers at that.
Thank you.
Mr. Lovett, the next question is for you, perhaps a little more direct. We have a large number of unmanned aircraft systems folks in the audience. What advice would you give them as they start seeking employment?
Well, I think we talked a little bit earlier about misconception in the industry, and there is a misconception from my perspective that if you are seeking a job as an operator, UAS operator, that's all you're going to do. When we look for an employee as an operator, we want somebody that has a skill set to have the stick and rudder skills, have the credentials, have the ability to do some maintenance, have some GIS experience, have some interest in learning other things. UAS operations take us to the pretty remote areas, especially doing linear infrastructure inspection. And we just don't hire an operator to be an operator. We want them to be a problem solver, whether it be computers and GIS related or flight planning or whatever. So we're really looking at a lot of different skill sets that appeal to us. So I would highly recommend that not highlight or just focus on the aircraft operations, but what else can you bring to the table? We say about 5 hours of flight planning goes into every hour of flight. And we do have our own dispatch, and we have a team that does the flight planning and coordinating with, whether it be ATO or whatever that we need to do, but it is certainly not limited to just flying.
Thank you.
One question I kind of had that wasn't quite discovered too in depth was the engineering portion of your staff at Phoenix Air. And I know I was quite impressed by just getting a contract from the CDC and then developing such a revolutionary system that helped save many, many lives. Are there any more of these contracts that you are looking to get into with your engineering team that's kind of in the near future that you're able to disclose?
Our special missions airplane is the Gulfstream line of jets. We have G1s, G2s, G2Bs, G3s, and G4s. Gulfstream Aerospace in Savannah, the factory, has approved us as a modification facility on Gulfstream jets for special missions work. In the last couple of years, we've modified a Gulfstream aircraft for the U.S. Air Force for a very specialized intelligence gathering mission, and we've modified 3 Gulfstreams for NASA, the Space Administration, for various types of earth sciences programs. And in fact, NASA has awarded us a 5-year contract to modify their whole fleet of Gulfstreams as needed. We don't have pure engineers on staff. We don't have enough work constantly at this point to need them. So we use a couple of area engineering firms that we bring in as subcontractors, but then we will bring in someone, you know, like yourself as a project manager. So we do have some engineers on staff that will sort of coordinate between our maintenance, our mod center, our metalworking shop, the client, the FAA. You know, there are a lot of moving parts. But again, the point is this: Phoenix Air is more than an airplane operator. We do own and operate a pretty major modification center, evidenced by those giant cargo doors that are in the Gulfstreams. We engineered that. We own the STC to it. No one else in the world has them. We have, I think, 5 of them right now. We're building 2 more. So down the road, you know, we have talked about increasing the workload in the modifications area. Part of the problem, frankly, is it's hard to get good sheet metal mechanics, A&P mechanics. In other words, everything in aviation right now is very tight, and we're not going to bite off more than we can chew. But Will probably would have do you have a need for engineers at this point?
We do. We have several mechanical engineers, aerospace engineers, but that's almost a secondary job beyond flying. So we do ask for them to use their skills and help him with a lot of not only creating new parts, but fabricating and integration and then operating. So that's, again, back to the original question is, you know, we want somebody with all those skills.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Kai. Aside from kind of your basic stick and rudder skills, what kind of skills and experiences do your most successful pilots have and you like new pilots to have coming into your company?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we look for all of our operators to have, at minimum, a private pilot license. I just personally think that gives you a baseline of aeronautical knowledge, experience. It's paramount for us to keep the skies safe. So you want to be aware of the manned aircraft out there and share the airspace with them. So I think if you're on the other side, you understand that perspective just as well. So I think it does help to have that, whether it be a baseline of knowledge of meteorology and airspace, or physiology. I think all of that is really important. I think flying different model aircraft is certainly a help. I know it's hard to gain, flight time, with a quad rotor, but everyone that we have hired has had a diverse level of experience, going from 20 hours of UAS experience that they've gained on their own to prior service. And every one of them goes through the same training program that we do in-house. So, we do look for that level of experience, but it's not like the traditional world where you're not eligible without 1,000 hours.
And also just coming from the manned aircraft side, what do you look for?
What skills are you looking for on the manned aircraft side?
Well, I mean, we're looking for everything. You know, we need pilots, we need mechanics, we need medical personnel. We've got 50 doctors, nurses, paramedics in our medical division. Right now, the entire industry is down. And it boils down to the experience level. Like I said earlier, you need to be a little bit more seasoned than coming straight out of an academic situation to work for us. But it's not that difficult to go get that experience. We have our own flight school, and we've had some folks that we really wanted, and they came out of different schools, including Embry-riddle, and they're a CFI, Certified Flight Instructor, and we've let them work a year in our flight school instructing. And they're building time, they're getting to know us, we're getting to know them, and when they're ready, we're going to bring them over as a co-pilot, first officer on a Learjet, and then they'll work through that for a little bit of time, then they'll become a captain, then eventually they'll go to the larger Gulfstream. So we have sort of a path forward. What we don't like to do, but we're sort of having to do it, is hire somebody with a lot of experience, excuse me, and plug them in at a Gulfstream captain level, where their bosses or officers over other folks that have put in a lot of time, you know, building towards that. But right now, we really don't have much of a choice with the problem. You know, I'll tell you right up front, I'll be very honest, Delta Airlines has a bounty on every Phoenix Air pilot's head. And any of our pilots that decide they want to go into a airline type job, Delta will just take them in a heartbeat. And it's not, I mean, it's business. We don't hold it against Delta, but it's a tough, competitive environment. Now, earlier, Will alluded to the fact that if you don't make money, you haven't done anything. This isn't a charity. We can't operate the unmanned aircraft for fun and not make money. So what Will is looking to do is find ways to maximize the unmanned aircraft, which in turn pays salaries to all of our employees. And it's the same thing at Phoenix Air. You know, we've had to raise our salaries in all of our employees significantly in the past year to keep up with the industry. And that's, frankly, that's why we're here, because we're looking not at tomorrow, but at a year or two down the road. You know, we have to start working at attracting pilots. See, in the old days being 3 years ago, we had all the pilots we needed. We were turning pilots down. There are certain people that love the type lifestyle we have, the work we do, but the problem is a lot of them, when the airlines all shut down, they took retirement. They took early retirement. So there's a huge missing sort of mid-level group of pilots and mechanics out there, and we're just having to make up for it. But nowhere are there better trained folks than right here at Embry-riddle. And President Butler, when you put in a medical school here, we'll get our medical people from here also.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just because the time is a little concerning, we'll take a last question from the audience here.
Hello, my name is Joshua Park, fourth-year student pursuing unmanned aircraft systems. So my question to Mr. Lovett is, big utility companies like Southern Company have their own drone program, developing ways to inspect transmission and distribution lines beyond visual line of sight. That's like their next goal. What direction is Phoenix Air Unmanned going to take to scale the business in the utility sector? And also, will the Swiss drone SDO50 V2 be type certified for unrestricted BVLOS and flight over people like Matternet M2?
Great technical questions. But you're right, Southern Company and many large utilities have their own in-house UAS programs. We're very aware of that, and I think that continues to grow and will. They want that to be another tool for the linemen and folks in the industry to use to take imagery and find out what equipment's needed. But we are offering our services to complement the utility services as a complex systems operator. So, having a waiver, flying BV loss, having four-wheel drive trucks with telescopic mast with all the electricity that's needed, most utilities don't want to invest in that technology. And so we want to be that provider of services for those complex operations. But there are utilities that want to do it themselves, and we understand that too. But I think there is a demand that we've seen for hiring a turnkey service provider like us. The Swiss drone, I don't think a decision has been made to pursue a TC. Again, that's up to the manufacturer, Swiss drones. I think they are further along in consideration through EASA, and perhaps maybe they would go that route there first. But we're very close to them, and obviously we want to see it TC'd so we can have approvals to do things a lot easier than this 44807 process. But I don't have the answer for you today. Great question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before we wrap up, just want to again thank you so much, Dan, and thank you so much for taking your time and joining us today. It's a great presentation. We really enjoying the both video and then deliverables, and we hope to see you one more time on campus. Thank you.
Good. Thank you.